August 10th, and Putin has a heart attack.
They got caught, look. They got into the database, those absolute bastards.
Russian ships in the Pacific and Northern fleets, as well as nuclear submarines, are under a new attack by the SBU. Iskander ballistic missile launchers have been blown up, and military airfields with strategic nuclear aviation are burning. The SBU attacked facilities of Russia's nuclear triad.
Something's on fire.
Factories that produce the intercontinental nuclear ballistic missiles Topol and Yars have been blown up. Russia's nuclear triad is under attack. Breaking news, friends. Ukraine has attacked 2 strategic nuclear airfields. Where the strategic nuclear bombers Engels and Diaghilevo are located. They got hit, they can't take off. For the very first time, Ukraine has successfully attacked with ballistic missiles in Bryansk. It appears they are currently detonating, causing significant impact.
Basically, that's where the sheds are burning. Everything is on fire. A lot is clearly going to burn there. It looks like the fire trucks aren't there yet. I wish they would get here soon.
This was a powerful special operation by the Security Service of Ukraine and other Ukrainian intelligence agencies. These were command posts for Iskander ballistic missiles in the Bryansk region. Ukraine is also preparing to attack Russian ships in the Pacific Ocean. According to the publication, Kyiv is planning an operation using naval drones hidden in cargo containers to strike Russian ships and their allies in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean. Ukraine has attacked 2 out of the 3 elements of the nuclear triad. And moving forward, a new phase of the SBU special operation is being prepared. Moreover, the Yaroslavl motor plant was on fire in Russia. This is one of the plants where engines are manufactured for the Topol-M complex vehicles, the intercontinental nuclear missiles Topol-M. In other words, essentially the nuclear triad. Let's discuss all this with the President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Kutaev. Ruslan Kamdish, welcome.
Dasha, good afternoon. Greetings to our viewers.
Ruslan Kamdish. We attacked ballistic missile launchers in Bryansk. This is a historic event. Let's start with that. What do you have to say about the attacks by the armed forces of Ukraine?
Well, this is a logical continuation of Ukraine's behavior. Ukraine is starting to act much further and significantly deeper, and the vast, expansive territory of the Russian military, let's say industrial complex, has a great many diverse enterprises of various types located on its extensive territory. Numerous warehouses, various military units, and as we can clearly see, Ukraine, specifically Ukrainian special services, are demonstrating first and foremost that they possess precise knowledge of where absolutely everything is strategically located. Secondly, that they are fully capable of effectively reaching these designated targets. And thirdly, that they are consistently and quite dynamically and effectively beginning to carry out the crucial work to systematically destroy all of this. You said it absolutely correctly here. These are indeed intercontinental ballistic missiles, which are specifically capable of carrying a powerful nuclear warhead. These missiles are also being destroyed. And here, I think it's entirely appropriate to remind our valued viewers that just yesterday, when the Russian forces were essentially preparing to retaliate against Ukraine with a truly heavy, powerful, and devastating strike, Ukrainian intelligence diligently detected significant activity involving these very dangerous Iskander missile launchers. It is known for certain that 1 Iskander launcher was destroyed and 2 were damaged. So, these 6 formidable and highly destructive missiles, which were apparently precisely aimed at some critically important and central administrative buildings within the heart of Kyiv, the capital city, were successfully intercepted and completely destroyed, and consequently, the very beginning of Vladimir Putin's deeply insidious and malevolent plan to destabilize the region and exert control was decisively and effectively thwarted. And of course, after that critical moment, they completely lost the crucial momentum that could have genuinely inspired the Russian forces, often pejoratively referred to as orcs, due to their aggressive and brutal actions, as well as the autocratic leader, Vladimir Putin himself, and his closest, most influential inner circle of advisors and confidants. So, look, what's really interesting here is that with every passing hour, Ukrainian special services are acting more and more actively. They are not only inflicting damage, but even in real time they manage to observe, gather intelligence on the actions of Russian missile systems, destroy them, and cause damage. This is a significant improvement in the skills and conduct of Ukrainian special services, military command, and of course the drone operators and missile crews. All of them are acting very successfully and skillfully, destroying Russian installations and the Russian military-industrial complex throughout the entire territory of Russia.
Operation Web continues. The SBU attacked two airfields, Engels and Diaghilevo, that is, two bases for Russia's strategic aviation, as well as an oil depot that supplies fuel to Russia's strategic nuclear aviation. At least 3 storage tanks are currently burning at the Crystal Plant oil storage facility of the Russian State Reserve. In other words, we continue to attack the bases of strategic nuclear aviation. Operation Web is ongoing. A Mi-8 helicopter was destroyed and a Mi-35 was damaged as a result of drone attacks, including at Bryansk airport last night. Ruslan Kutaev, the floor is yours.
These crucial reserves, specifically the state fuel reserves, and more precisely, the aviation fuel, yes, initially 3 massive tanks were directly hit, but according to the very latest and most recent information available, the raging fire has regrettably already spread to 3 additional nearby tanks, and this perilous situation is still very much ongoing, and it is entirely possible that it will unfortunately continue to spread even further, causing more extensive damage. Firefighters, as we know from similar incidents at oil depots, often find it impossible even to contain the fire. Usually it spreads from one tank to another, engulfing industrial facilities, let's say oil processing plants, and all of it, well, essentially becomes completely consumed by the raging fire. I think, and there too, the situation is still entirely unresolved and quite complex. The fire is still raging, and it's still unclear how much will be destroyed as a result of this operation and the actions of the Ukrainian side.
We'll discuss a bit later the fact that Ukraine is preparing attacks on Russian ships in the Pacific Ocean and that Sevastopol and Crimea have been hit by Neptunes. But for now, I'd like us to focus on a very interesting and important topic. Friends, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now, something like an Orlan drone exploded in the sky over Kazakhstan, breaking apart into pieces. And the first to report this were Russian military correspondents, also known as Russian war reporters or Z-bloggers. They wrote about the failed launch of the Oreshnik. Kapustin Yar is close to the border with Kazakhstan. That night, Putin decided to attack Ukraine. He did attack it, and he surely wanted to use the Oreshnik, an intercontinental missile. The question is, does this Oreshnik actually exist? Did it explode? And why did it explode, Ruslan Kutaev? Let's think this through together.
First of all, I served in Kopeisk. I served at the base, at the testing ground we're talking about now, in the automotive troops of the rocket and artillery forces. And indeed, intercontinental ballistic missile tests were conducted there. There, the Astrakhan region borders Kazakhstan, which at that time was the Guriev region. And indeed, tests were conducted there, launches took place there, and this launch was supposed to, I analyzed what the experts are saying. The Oreshnik was most likely launched. And the fact that we have pictures and recordings most likely indicates that somewhere over the steppes, the Kazakh steppes, this Oreshnik exploded in the air, and it was actually unable not only to complete, but essentially even to begin its course toward Ukraine. What does this tell us? We know that during the first strikes in the Dnipropetrovsk region, the Oreshnik accomplished less than 5% of what Russia had expected. There was no destruction there. They hit a training center there, and that was all they managed to do. And now, too, it seems they tried to use the Oreshnik for this purpose. They were very upset. They needed to show the orcs back in Russia that they're still a force to be reckoned with, that they can do something, scare someone. But it's not working, it's just not working. They had a failure with the Iskanders. Ukraine destroyed them when they were deployed in the Bryansk region on the front line for an attack on Kyiv. With the Oreshnik, as we can see, it was a complete failure. Russian rocket troops and artillerymen are falling apart in all directions across Russia, so to speak. No matter how hard they try, it's not working for them, and it's not working because all of this is built exclusively on the foundation of Soviet weaponry. There's nothing new, they haven't accomplished anything. All their claims, all those cartoons have remained just cartoons, and they can't move beyond that. This is the problem of Putin, the Russian armed forces, and this entire Russian fascist horde that would like to drown the entire population of Ukraine in blood. It's not because they don't want to, it's because it just doesn't happen. They can't do it. This is what we need to understand and be aware of.
Ruslan Kutaev, let's return to the topic of Russia's nuclear triad, which everyone is talking about right now, and which in fact was attacked by Ukraine and its special services. All the world leaders have written about this now. They even reported on it. Kaja Kallas officially stated that this is unprecedented. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and even Donald Trump, through his sources, conveyed that he too was stunned by the SBU's special operation. And so, as we discussed last time, it is necessary to attack the Russian Federation's fleet, the nuclear submarines. There is the Northern Fleet of the Russian Federation, which was attacked, and there is the Pacific Fleet of the Russian Federation. We discussed this with you, and just on the eve of our stream today, the Washington Post published a piece saying that Ukraine is preparing attacks on Russian ships in the Pacific Ocean. According to the publication, Kyiv is planning an operation to use naval drones hidden in cargo containers to strike Russian ships and their allies in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean. But it's very hard for me to imagine that Ukrainian intelligence services would announce their attacks through the Washington Post. Why was this done? Let's in general discuss the attacks on the Pacific Fleet, on the Northern Fleet, and how much of a blow this would actually be for Putin.
Dasha, let's first agree on the following. The Washington Post, Bloomberg, and other highly reputable newspapers are certainly not the kind of mainstream media outlets that would, let's say, intentionally spread demonstrably false or misleading news. If these esteemed publications wrote about it, then without a shadow of a doubt, they absolutely have solid grounds and verifiable evidence to confidently say so. First. Second, if the Ukrainian intelligence services, armed forces, and political leadership did not prohibit this from being published, it means they have sufficient grounds to believe that this operation is under extremely tight security and that they are confident that, regardless of the fact that it has been made public, they will be able to carry out this operation to the end. Third, and this is very important, the Pacific Fleet, as we understand, North Korea is now responding, and Shoigu is currently in North Korea. Russia is demanding soldiers, and North Korea is supplying ammunition, weapons, and sending people. And now it is very important if Ukraine really does this, and I am absolutely convinced that they will indeed be able to accomplish this significant feat, and they manage to reach the distant cities of Vladivostok, Khabarovsk, and the entire Far Eastern region, and if they even slightly manage to successfully hit some crucial ships, some vital movements, perhaps even large tankers or essential cargo vessels, then in this particular case, the Russian Federation will not just be placed in an uncomfortable, but rather a profoundly disadvantageous and precarious position. Russia will be in a state of, well, crisis, because that's the area where practically all those ports are exposed, even the military bases, everything that was there in terms of air defense and missile defense has been moved here, closer to the front, to Moscow and away from there. If such a threat arises now, if suddenly drones start flying, and they will, then in that case, they'll have to pull something away from there, from the front, from here, from the center, and bam, transfer it over there to the Far East. That's bad news for Russia. How are they going to compensate for that? It's impossible to predict because openly, China can't provide them with missile defense or air defense systems. North Korea doesn't have the means to protect against such weapons. Russia itself either doesn't produce them at all, or if it does, it's only 1 or 2 units per year. There are no spare parts, there aren't the kinds of machines that would allow them to manufacture such complex military equipment today, like this missile and air defense equipment. So, to be honest, these are extremely serious problems. But even you and I have talked here before that these problems would arise. We said that Ukraine is developing its technological capabilities. Germany. Merz stated that joint Ukrainian-German production will, in the coming weeks, already be deployed to the front lines for immediate and effective use. Ukraine will indeed use newly manufactured missiles of joint German-Ukrainian production. These are the first fruits not just of supplying weapons and ammunition, but of the work of joint ventures in Ukraine's military-industrial complex, with Europeans, with the British, with the Germans, with the Poles. And these are exactly the results. That's why they're able to reach Irkutsk. That's why there are real reasons to believe they'll reach Vladivostok as well, and everywhere else, even Murmansk. So our expectations are not just wishful thinking. Our expectations are genuinely high, and all of this combined is destroying Russian logistics. Ammunition and weapons, people, they can't even manage to bring them up to the front. They can't even get them to the frontline zone, and that's where they're being destroyed. That's how things are working. Relationships are improving. The entire approach to everything is being refined. It's no coincidence that Russian war correspondents are making noise. They're talking, for example, about the appointment of Madyar as the commander of drones in Ukraine. What a commotion that caused. A man who sat in the trenches, but as some ordinary soldier or sergeant started out as an operator. What he accomplished, could something like that even be possible in Russia? Never, under any circumstances, could such a rise happen in Russia because of someone's personal qualities. It's impossible. But in Ukraine, it is possible, and that's why they're winning. That's why Ukrainian engineering thought is ahead. Why is that? Because here the principle is, if you can, take the lead. If you know how, create. That's the Ukrainian principle, and that's why they're winning. There's no need to be surprised. They will continue to advance. This is the outlook for this war.
We are expecting another series of explosions in Crimea. In Simferopol, military facilities have been attacked by Neptunes. There is a kilometer-long line of trucks at the Chonha checkpoint entering the annexed Crimea. A huge number of explosions, and once again, the Kerch Bridge is under attack, with an alert in place there. But before we discuss this, the segment called Occupied Crimea, Shamkom Dek, I want us to talk about a very important point. The West, Europe, and America did not provide us with all the weapons because they were afraid of nuclear escalation. They were afraid of that nuclear triad. They were afraid that if they gave Ukraine weapons so that it could win, so that it could attack Russia deep within its territory, so that it could drive the Russians out of our land, Russia would start World War III, a nuclear war, and so on. And now Ukraine is demonstrating that we have attacked Russia, the nuclear triad, and there is no nuclear war. Let's just discuss this precedent together. So Ukraine did this with drones, right? Not with multi-billion-dollar weapons. In other words, we attacked multi-billion-dollar weaponry, about $7 billion in total, using drones, unmanned aerial vehicles.
Indeed, at first, when this nuclear, more precisely this highest level strategic aviation was destroyed, it was assumed that, well, after this, if they ever intended to use nuclear weapons. By the way, they were shouting about this too. There in Russia, in Moscow, the military correspondents were encouraging the political and military leadership to use it if they ever intended to do so. But we knew they would never do it. Why won't they do it? Because they are hostages of the situation they themselves created. Their families, their money, their status, all of it depends on the West. They study there, they live there, they keep their money there in the West. They didn't start this war to die or for some idea. They started it because of the whim of a madman who somewhere deep inside was offended by something. So what? The president is young, a progressive president of Ukraine, and all of it bothered him. Putin about him, his youth, his intelligence, his insight. And he decided, as he said, to teach this jester, this clown, a lesson. And in the end, it turned out that Putin himself was the jester, he was the clown, and he was the coward. As soon as a situation arises that could even be slightly dangerous or potentially threatening, he immediately runs away, he quickly hides, he conceals himself, and he is truly afraid to make any kind of decision whatsoever. So after this truly brilliant web operation, a remarkably well-executed and successful operation was carried out, he immediately called Donald Trump, and to the young Mr. Trump, he vociferously complained, saying that Ukraine was involved in significant terrorist acts and various other hostile activities. And Mr. Trump's subsequent behavior in response to these allegations remains quite unclear and ambiguous. The president of the greatest country, the greatest state, what is he doing? He is, in fact, unequivocally making extreme and unacceptable terrorist demands on behalf of a rogue and dangerous terrorist state. And Trump voices these demands to the whole world. In fact, Putin's demand that Putin is going to respond to Ukraine in the harshest way, Trump not only doesn't protest, but moreover, he broadcasts it. So it turns out that Trump in Putin's hands is the tool used by terrorists. And here, America did not act as it was essentially obligated to. There was no such behavior. But within America itself, this was given a very serious assessment. They called Trump out on it. He did this somewhere in his own social media, recorded it, and then they quickly removed Trump's recording because it was absolutely clear that Trump had essentially caved and was afraid of Putin. In America, they understand that Putin is using Trump as a tool. Putin has done everything to put pressure on Ukraine. Putin has done everything to use Trump. He really is taking advantage of him. And all of this, I emphatically repeat, when you carefully look at it from various different perspectives and across multiple distinct platforms, no matter precisely who is speaking or making crucial decisions, in any given case, Ukraine has not only not decisively backed down, not only has it not completely stopped its determined efforts, but as we thoroughly discussed a little bit earlier, Ukraine has steadfastly continued its significant operations. Ukraine is not looking back at anyone. Today, Ukraine understands that it will only have what it achieves on its own. It's not European weapons, it's not American weapons, but Ukrainian drones were able to accomplish what they did. And now, regarding what was said in the Washington Post, they didn't say they would strike with American Tomahawks. No, what they said was that Ukrainian drones will reach Vladivostok and will attack the Pacific Fleet. This is the true character of Ukraine, the character of the Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian president. They stop at nothing. They keep moving forward. And this is the only thing that can stop Trump, Putin, and everyone else.
Shamkomdek, Russian public pages and media have reported that Putin had a heart attack, which is why he hasn't appeared in public for a long time. I would like you to comment on this.
Well, I wouldn't rule it out. If he ever does have a heart attack, it's bound to happen eventually, because it's one blow after another, literally one after the other, hitting him. Look, for example, at the meeting between the Chancellor of Germany and the President of the United States. He arranged his meeting in a very skillful, elegant, and diplomatic way. And what a truly principled and unwavering stance the German leader demonstrably demonstrated. He did not, on any single significant issue whatsoever, refuse to fully and unequivocally support Ukraine. He made it absolutely and unequivocally clear to President Trump that the country which launched this unprovoked and aggressive attack is indeed Russia, and that it is the nation that bears full and undeniable responsibility for bringing forth such profound and destructive evil into the world. And that's why, when Ukraine is supported from all sides, when Ukraine is advancing on the front lines, when Ukrainians are getting stronger, just look at how much effort and how much money has been poured into Ukrainian society just to find at least 3 people who would crow that Zelensky should be removed or that the war should be stopped. They can't even find 2 or 3 people to support what they've been shouting about for 3.5 years, to get support in Ukraine, in Ukrainian society, among the Ukrainian people. Of course, from this, not only will he have a heart attack, I think soon he'll just completely kick the bucket. And that's why I think others understand this too, other people, even those close to him. Actually, I think we've discussed this before, you and I. Right now, most likely, there are serious talks about sending Putin into retirement, and in order to keep him from interfering, they're considering someone from among his daughters. There's talk about Tikhonova, and that's why I think this is also real and it's also serious. Putin understands he can't win. Putin understands he was hoping that Trump could do something, that he could hand over Ukraine as a side that has already capitulated. Trump can't do that. He can't, because besides Trump, there's also Congress, there's the US Senate, and in the end, there's the American court system. And there are the American people, 67% of whom support Ukraine. And all of this combined together doesn't even give the Russian political leadership any genuine hope that significant help might come from somewhere else. That by forcefully compelling Ukraine and the entirety of Europe, which is a very close and steadfast ally of Ukraine, to ultimately yield, Russia could then be granted a decisive victory. Victory, Russia cannot win. Russia needs someone to hand them victory. There is no such player today who can do that. And that's why we can confidently say Ukraine is moving toward its victory. Ukraine is doing everything to win. And going forward, this will happen much more often and more effectively. And over there, on the Russian side, they know and understand this.
Sam Kudich, to sum up on occupied Crimea. Right now, we are carrying out a huge number of special operations, attacking the military airfield and the Kerch Bridge for the third time. And now, once again, Neptunes are attacking Crimea. Moreover, according to local social media channels, the entry of trucks onto the Kerch Bridge has been closed. When entering the peninsula via the so-called land corridor through the occupied territories, security forces are searching every truck with a magnifying glass in search of good drones. Well, and in general, there is already information that the Kerch Bridge is closed again, and it is expecting a strike. There is an air raid alert. What do you think?
After the Ukrainian Neptunes, it is highly probable that the German Tauruses will indeed follow. I have absolutely no doubt about that whatsoever. They're taking aim, did you notice? Right now, there's a lot of significant commotion and considerable activity around the Kerch Bridge, both from the land side, specifically from Crimea, and from Krasnodar, encompassing both sides of the Kerch Bridge, and also from the water. And then, in addition to that, there are these sea drones. Everything imaginable is currently being deployed and utilized now. They are presently searching for the most effective and impactful way to strike. The effectiveness and devastating power of Taurus missile strikes have long been widely known and acknowledged worldwide. They will definitely and assuredly try them out on the Kerch Bridge. Over there in Crimea, they already fully understand and comprehend this situation. They understand. Why? How do I know this? They're fleeing from their people who just came to set up a business. Some were lured in, some came voluntarily, some wanted to live there, some needed to settle down. They understand that you can't build a life there anymore. They realize the noose is tightening. So what do they want? They want to escape from Crimea. They understand that they could become hostages. Not hostages of Ukraine, but hostages of the FSB NKVD troops, who won't let them leave and will keep them as hostages, because there's a danger that through this bottleneck in the Kherson region, the Ukrainian army might and will definitely attack and move into Crimea. That's why they will continue trying to keep these residents of Crimea as hostages. That's why everyone understands, and that's why everyone is fleeing.
Yes, swim, freestyle, breaststroke, however you like, just urgently leave Ukrainian Crimea. Brilliant analysis by the President of the Assembly of Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Kutaev. Dear friends, please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the comments, write a few kind words in support of Ukraine and the armed forces of Ukraine, because we work for an audience all over the world so that they know the truth about Russian aggression. That's why every comment, every subscription from you is priceless. Thank you all. Shamkadich, thank you so much. As always, see you soon.
See you soon. Dear friends, please support Dasha and her channel. You will hear good news from this channel many more times. All the best. Take care.